Hello everybody and welcome back. So in today's video I want to discuss how to set up your water treated hot stones in a little bit more depth, but we'll also cover how we can alternatively heat hot stones through electric means, as well as we'll talk about some alternatives that are maybe a little bit more obscure and less seen or utilized in the massage profession as well, and then possibly even talk about the stones that you might even be looking to gather. So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about the water treated hot stone method, which is by far the most common way that people will understand or have heard of how to heat their hot stones. So to do that, we're going to need a water heater hot stone massage device, right? So in this particular case, this may be an older model. So in order to actually heat our hot stones with water, we're going to need a hot stone warmer made for massage therapy. So looks like a crock pot. I suggest you don't use an actual crock pot. The hot stone warmers have actually come down a lot in their price over the years, and so they're a lot more affordable and ultimately more designed and better suited for the job than an actual crock pot. Because the problem with crock pots is that they can't get to a low enough temperature for our hot stones. So today I have this hot stone warmer that is a little bit old and it still gets the job done, but I'll talk about what you're actually wanting to look for in a hot stone warmer. Namely, one, we do want to have a digital interface. So a digital interface is a little bit different than this one, which is just a turn dial, as you can see, where we can just set the heat based off of an arbitrary indication here where it's just a slow scale from the coldest setting to the hottest setting. So the electric or digital interface is a lot more consistent in telling us what our temperature is, because otherwise with a method like this we'll actually have to use a thermometer to check our temperature, and it's just a little bit more annoying, a little bit more work than we really want to have to do for our hot stones. So most modern day hot stones are probably in a digital interface, a lot easier to set up. Now, regardless of the hot stone warmer used for the water treated method, you're going to have a basin and a lid. So I'll put this lid down here. So with the basin, it's pretty similar to your crock pot method where you just have this, little base here, and you're going to place your stones here within this basin. Now, with our hot stones, you might notice one thing though, that the basin here is typically black, and so is our hot stones. This hot stones might be a little bit more brown, but hot stone like this, obviously a lot more darker and harder to see in this pan. Now, accompany that with a dark massage room as well as the water sitting within this container, it's going to be very difficult to actually see our hot stones. So what we can actually do to work around that is we can take a white towel and we can line the bottom of the pan with the towel. Now this towel might be a little bit larger than we need, so typically something like just a hand towel or just a little kitchen towel or something like that. And now you can see that the bottom of this pan is white, and when we place our stones in there, they're easy to see. So when we actually place our stones in, depending on how much room you have, there's a few ways. Obviously this container is quite big where I can place a lot of stones very easily within it and just line it up and stack them. But I like to be quite organized with my stones, and I'll typically line them relatively vertical, just like this. So we'll fast forward this section as I go ahead and line up my stones, and we'll talk about it afterwards. All right, so we have our hot stones laid out in our pan, and as you can see, I try to go with a little bit consistency with my placement. So I'll have my roughly similar sized stones on one side, nice and lined up, easy to grab, and then any stones that might have interesting or unique shapes, such as this stone, or really large stones with, you know, a lot of shape and contour to them, possibly off to the side, where I know I can grab them for those really specific areas of the body. Now, once we've got our stones lined up in this pan, all we need to do is fill it with water. Now, this pan is quite deep, so I could definitely cover all these stones and it would be perfectly fine without overspilling my water anywhere. And then all I have to do is just turn the hot stone warmer on. However, if your pan is a little bit more shallow and you have larger stones maybe sticking up like this, as long as you have the bulk of the stone covered, it's fine. So if you have a little iceberg tipping out of there, that's okay. It's still going to heat up just fine and it'll be a-okay. Now, on the topic of heating up your stones, how long should we heat our stones and at what temperature should we heat our stones? Well, we should strive for a range of roughly between 100, that's really low, maybe 110, upwards of 140, which is quite high. My preferred range is somewhere between 110 and 130 degrees. Now, do consider that the legalities of your state or even your insurance policies regarding hot stones, of how to implement them, might be different than what I'm used to here in the state of Florida. So you'd always check with what's legal in your state, also with what's legal and permitted with your insurance provider, should you have insurance for hot stones as well. So, but anyways, I like to go with about 130 degrees. I find that to be a nice, perfect temperature where the stones will be nice and warm, that even if they're too hot, I can leave them out, let them sit and cool for just a moment, and then I'll be able to use them and they'll maintain their heat for a good length of time. So, as for our timing, how long do we need to let these stones sit before they're ready to use? Now, with the water-treated method, the stones are going to take a lot longer to heat up in this particular manner than other methods. So, of course, we could go straight to using the hottest water that might come out of our tap, and that might speed up the process a little bit, but you can estimate somewhere between 30 to 40 minutes for your stones to be usable, and that's still on the low end for your hot stone massage. So I would safely say that at least about an hour's worth of cooking your rock soup here, to allow the stones to heat up towards their core and be usable. So typically with the water treated method, you really want to set this up ahead of time. Usually when you come into the spa in the morning, you'll set up your stones, leave them on, and the temperature shouldn't be so high that you'll worry about, you know, boiling over or anything like that. And you can just let your stones sit and wait, you know, for whenever you're ready to use them. Now, I did mention that you want your stone to heat to the core. So what exactly do I mean by that? Well, some stones, as you can see with this one, is very fat, very large, you know, has a lot of density to it, such as that one as well. Whereas some stones, you know, such as this, are a lot skinnier, right? So it's the kind of concept that if you were to put a Hot Pocket into the microwave and you put it on blast, and then you bite into that Hot Pocket, the outside is lava hot, and it burns and incinerates your mouth, and when you get to the center, it's a full frozen block of cheese or whatever, and you hate yourself, and you're like, why did I eat this Hot Pocket? Well, try not to hate yourself for eating that Hot Pocket, and allow the stone to cool to the, or excuse me, to heat to the center, just as you would cooking anything in your kitchen. So we need to give those stones that time for them to be able to heat up and get to our working temperature. So once our temperature is set and we give it enough time, then we're able to use this, and all we have to do is bring this into our room or have it already pre-set up in our room. Of course, I like to make sure that it stays covered with our lid, which, you know, helps to insulate the heat. Now, if it's too hot, of course, leaving the lid off definitely allows for the stones and the water itself to cool down. Now, the next thing you're going to want to also consider with your hot stone setup is having a rolling cart like this. As you can see, this rolling cart can move, and it has other shelves where I can put other things, such as a bucket for additional dirty stones, where I can actually put my cleaning solution or soapy water or whatever in here and throw my dirty stones into this bucket so that I have a nice easy bucket to clean my stones later with. And they'll be out of the way, nice and kept, and everything will be nice, neat, organized, and pretty. So the stones on this little setup are also more mobile, right? Because obviously we're going to need to work around the table and work all various parts of our client's body. And if we have a stone setup and it's all in our corner, it's going to be very annoying to grab more stones and come back and forth to the body. So it should be nice and easy to maneuver your rolling cart with your stones on it as from there, and just go around the table, grab stones as needed, and have a jolly day and a great massage, right? So some of the downsides of the water treated method that I find and have seen within my own practice is that, one, it's so much more setup. As you see, we took so many minutes just to explain how the setup went. We fast forwarded through the stone placement, and we had to put the water, we had to let the stones heat for like an hour for them to be usable. And then, of course, when it's time to clean them, that's a whole nother video in itself, where we're breaking down the entire basin and cleaning all the stones and this, that, and the other, and dumping the water. It's a very big process. Plus, even with your lid, the condensation is actually going to collaborate and collect on the lid, and this water gets everywhere. Honestly, a fire hazard, since we're running with electricity and wires around the area. So it's good. It's definitely the tried and true method, but it's a little archaic in my opinion, and we'll see other options that might be a little bit more viable. Now, the upside is that with a container like this, we have a lot more room as some of the other options we might be able to use, so we can definitely fill a lot of stones in this container at one time. So especially with a container this large, I could probably leave this big old thing in my room with a giant amount of stones. I could probably fit, I mean, if we really hashed it out here, we could probably fit about maybe 40 or so stones, 60 or so stones, maybe more depending on the size of the stones, in this container, and be able to work throughout the day. The only kicker to that is that if we're using the same pot of stones, we have to be very cautious of cross-contamination. We don't want to get any funk or gunk into our water mixture, so we definitely want to make sure that we use tongs or some sort of spatula, scooper, ladle, whatever that we can use to get our stones out. Now, do be careful. This one happens to be metal, and so when I try to go get a stone, I want to be nice and silent like that. I don't want to, especially with the towel here helps to silence it out, but if I didn't have that towel and I'm trying to scoop a stone and it sounds like, well, that's not very relaxing in a massage, so do be careful of how you get the stones out, and then make sure that you don't get any nastiness in there. Use your clean utensil to, get a stone out of there. That way you can keep using this throughout the day. But also consider too, if you were only using this for one client and you had a smaller pot, you'd be able to put stones back in and then keep working, right? So in that case, what I do is I line one side of my container with stones, and then I'll pull from this side, and as I put the stones back, I'll put them on the opposite side, so that I know after I've made my way from one side, once I start going back this way, those stones should roughly be hot enough to be used again later in the massage. So, other advantages and disadvantages of the water-treated method is that it is one of the most common ways that people use hot stone or implement hot stone into their practice. So the warmers and heaters are very widely available, easy to obtain, and relatively easy to use outside of the annoyance of the water and everything. And as I've mentioned in my own practice, I've seen that if someone is going to cancel your appointment and you leave you high and dry, or in this case, hot water wet, it's going to be when you set up a hot stone for them. So it's so annoying that when that client, cancels and you don't have a cancellation policy and you can't collect money, you got to break all this down. It's just so much more involved. But otherwise, it's a great method and really wonderful for your clients. Very convenient in most cases, with a few downsides. Great tried and true method. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of our other alternatives in which we can heat hot stones. Okay, so our next up methods are what we would say is electric heating. So using like hot pads, heating pads, hot plates, whatever that you might consider to be an electric means to heat your stones. So in this particular case, something you've probably seen on Amazon or out there on Massage Warehouse or whatever websites you might frequent for your massage tools, we have the clamshell. As you can see, this looks like a nice pretty clam deep in the ocean sea, and when we open it, wow, look at all those wonderful hot stone pearls within this container. Now, this is a great method in many ways. As you can see, it has two plates, one on the bottom and one on the top, so that when we fold it down, it heats the stones on both sides, and it does so very quickly. So all we need to do is place our stones within the pad here, within the clamshell, close it, and then literally with the flick of a button, it turns on and it heats. And I've felt that these stones have definitely gotten hot enough within 10 minutes to be quite usable. So, it's really convenient that if you forgot that your client was doing a hot stone and you have this, let's say you flick it on and put it in the room, and within, 5 or 10 minutes while you're doing a little prep massage on your client, they're hot and ready to use in that massage right then and there. Now this other method here, still same thing, is using a heating plate at the very bottom of this little container, and then we just have a 9-pan which we can put stones in. So the downside of that is that it's only heating from one side, but with this external pan it makes it really convenient to lift up, take out, and go clean. But I've also seen people talking about using other methods like this particular thing with what you'd see in like catering, so like the electric warmers for the food and catering. I've heard people using that. I definitely can't speak for it because I've never tried it, but if you want to look into that, more power to you. Just know it does not have my stamp of approval. Now, as you can see, with this method, we have very limited space in this container itself. Not only is there not enough space for a whole lot of stones, it's also not enough space for really differentiated stones. So you can see that all of these stones are roughly the same thickness, and they have to be very thin so that this can close upon them and heat the stone. So unfortunately, we don't really have the ability to use any of our really natural, really nice stones with all the different shapes and thicknesses and everything. And so that also means with thinner stones, our stones aren't going to stay heated as long. But being that this is a non-porous surface, we can put the stones back. So it's not very hard to actually keep this sanitary and clean between clients and with minimal, downtime of having to clean it. So, in my opinion, this is definitely a little bit more convenient and easier to implement your stones, and it's honestly just my go-to method. That's what I use in my practice. With the minor downsides is, negated by the convenience, in my opinion. So, a few other downsides to the clamshell method is that we can't control the heat. While I haven't experienced a setup like this that gets so excessively hot or is not hot enough, it's usually at a pretty good temperature to work with. It is a bit of a downside, a con towards the clamshell setup that we can't actually change or alter or choose our heat. So it is a one type of setting. However, there are workarounds. If it's too hot, it's pretty easy to cool the stones. All I have to do is just leave the lid open for a brief moment, or just keep it kind of cracked, and it will vent the stones and they'll cool enough to where it'll be usable. Obviously, if they don't get hot enough, well, there's not much we can do about that, so you might want to consider another alternative, or perhaps your clamshell or whatever setup is just a little bit defective, and maybe you can send it back and get a refund. So aside from those two main methods, those are the most common methods you'll probably see within the massage industry to heat your stones. Obviously, both have their pros and cons between the two, but other alternatives that I've seen people use are like electric heated stones. So the stone itself actually has a heating pad in it. Obviously, it's not like a real stone. The ones I've seen are usually made out of ceramic, though I have seen some that are made out of plastic that you just charge, and then you turn a button on and they heat up. And some of them I've seen to have a pretty decent battery life, and so upwards of 4 hours with a 2-hour charge. So, you know, you could have a couple sets that you can rotate out and, you know, theoretically be able to use all day. So some of the downsides of those that I've seen is that, well, one, the ceramic ones, if you drop that, it's toast. It's gonna break, and I've seen it happen so many times. It's kind of nerve-wracking, because the other downside is that they are expensive. They're roughly $60 a set, and you only get 2 of them. And you know, some of the more, you know, elaborate or well-designed ones are probably upwards of $100 per stone. So they definitely can be costly, and you know, especially I don't want to really run the risk of them breaking, as well as they're a little harder to clean, because typically on the inside, especially the ceramic ones that I've seen and used, it has like a little gasket to try to block most moisture out, but it is definitely not, you know, completely water safe. So you do have to be very careful of how you clean it and how you handle it, especially if you're, you know, using lotion, it gets in there, right? It's very, very, very difficult and annoying to use. Now, some people have also come up to me and said that they've tried using the hot towel warmers, or cabbies, and I've heard some people say they've worked for them, but I have never in my entire career, and I've been a massage therapist for 8 years now, I've never efficiently used a hot towel warmer or cabbie to heat my stones. Perhaps if I left them overnight, they would be hot enough sometime next week. But I have never seen the stone get hot enough. I just don't think it's designed to do that. And it's also really hard to move that cabbie around, even if it is on a rolling cart, to just be wheeling this mini fridge around with you. So personally, I would steer away from using that as an option for your stones. But if that's all you have, it's better than nothing. I have had people talk about using like an air fryer or something like that, and I've never actually used an air fryer to cook anything. Shock and awe, oh my God, never used an air fryer. But I doubt that it will be a low enough temperature for it to be functional, so I would probably steer away from commercial food cooking or prepping devices, such as even regular crock pots. So before we leave, let's just go ahead and briefly talk about the hot stones themselves. Now, with our hot stones, we have what's called basalt stones. So a basalt stone is typically a stone with a metallic content to it, usually an iron content. Now, there's lots of hot stone sets out there. Some are what I call like the prefabbed or the remanufactured or whatever, and they all have the same shape. As you can see, these are all factory made, same shape. And I highly doubt that these stones are completely basalt. So you do have to be careful when you're buying your stones, as opposed to a stone more natural like this, where it might actually have some iron content to it. You can probably see the veins of the metallic content in the stone itself. They also have a lot more of a natural shape, but they're typically a little harder to come by, a little bit more expensive. But needless to say, those stones should have a nice iron content, which helps them to maintain their heat, which is also kind of goes along with what other methods we could use to heat our stones. Do not put your stones in the microwave, especially if they have the metallic content. I feel that should be easy enough to understand why, but I don't want my stone to explode inside my microwave and then create a hazard for me and my fellow employees or whatever. So, you know, you'll just have to look around and find your sets. Some people like the river rocks too, which, I mean, theoretically you could go to Home Depot and buy yourself like some nice smooth garden stones for 16 bucks and get like a 5-pound bag of them. Sure, the only issue with that is, again, unlike the basalt stones with the iron content, they won't stay hot as long. But if you're, you know, looking for a very cheap way to practice or implement hot stone, it might work. Just make sure that, of course, the stone is polished and it's not sandpaper and you're exfoliating your client's skin off to the bone. Who wants that? Obviously, that wouldn't be very enjoyable. Well, I think that's all we have for today about any hot stone setup or things of that nature. If you feel like I left something out, you go ahead and drop a message in the comments. You know, I'll be happy to answer any questions or even make a follow-up video or put in some notes into the comments about anything that I might not have covered in this particular video today. Again, thank you guys for watching. It's wonderful to be back and making videos again after such a long break. So please go ahead and follow and watch the next ones. Have a great day.